Funny you bring up confessions extracted under police torture and interrogation, because another big character in the book is Rahm Emanuel, who now just left office as the mayor of Chicago to get a cush job at the Atlantic, which I want to get into in a bit. But how does Rahm figure in this book? Because you said you sort of started telling this story in 2000. You started sort of looking into this, for finding this story in 2006 during the midterm elections, of which at the time Rahm was the
D-triple-C chair.
chair. And like, what was the strategy that like he brought to bear in 2006?
As this realignment is happening, Rahm is, he's we're seeing it through the lens of his career in your book.
Yeah, and Rahm is kind of the main character
it's a POV character
in the book. Yes, his first campaign, 1980, where he tries to beat the Republican who is Arafat's best buddy in the House of Representatives.
Well, you're saying like it seems odd to now, but like this is like a different era in politics where like across parties you could sort of like have your faves in foreign countries.
Yes.
Like there's like Republicans who are like, yeah, I support Arafat or
PLO's man in Washington.
PLO or Turkey or whatever.
And taking him out was AIPAC's first win.
So
Dick Durbin ended up beating him in '82. That was AIPAC's first.
That was Rahm's first job in politics.
Yeah.
You said that his first job was a fundraiser.
As a 20-year-old fundraiser, he was just so good at it. Yeah, people who knew him then, he'd be like 22. He'd see like the Commerce Secretary, Bub, what's going on? How you doing? Like just backslapping, like he just absolutely belonged there.
So he never even had an idealistic phase that he grew out of or anything. He was just a lizard from the jump.
But he was raised with one, and idealism takes different forms. His dad was an Irgun.
He volunteered for the IDF, right?
He volunteered for the IDF during the Gulf War. Rahm Emanuel, his father was a terrorist.
True,
which means he believed in something.
No, ma'am. His father was a good person.
An American. Good. And his mother was a civil rights activist. And he talks about the kind of social justice conversations they'd have around the table. And so, he was in it for the cause of Israel in that first campaign, 1980. So he did believe in something at that point. But so by 2006, he's a proponent of the idea that if you're going to win the House, you need to find the most right-wing guy you can find who will call himself a Democrat and run them in all of these districts. And what he was so good at was pretending to the press that strategy worked. But if you actually explore the numbers, they won on an anti-war wave with Rahm Emanuel insisting that none of his candidates could say they opposed the war.
And the ideal candidate would be
a veteran,
a vet. A vet who has sort of tactical critiques about the war in Iraq.
Yeah, they wanted to change direction. Like that was their phrase. We want a new direction in Iraq.
Blue dog vets, county sheriffs,
NFL quarterbacks,
anyone who could self-fund.
NFL quarterbacks, bad
Schiller,
NFL
baby.
quarterbacks, and their strategy has evolved. It used to be anti-gay vets. Now it's gay veterans. but essentially,
it's a relatively short amount of time. So that's
progress.
Yeah, that is progress.
Yeah.
So in 2006, like the Democrats, they do take back both the House.
They take back the
House and the Senate in 2006. But as you were saying, like Rahm's genius is sort of convincing people that he is like the man, the power broker, the guy who pulls the strings and has the plan or whatever. But as you point out, there was a broad feeling by 2006 of like disgust and fear about where the Iraq War was going, and that people did not want to continue. Like this was like the insurgency was like roiling the country, and this was like years after mission accomplished, and Bush was deeply unpopular.
And Republicans had a pedophile in the House,
Mark Foley,
who was exposed toward the very end. Tom DeLay was on his way to prison. It was a really hard election to screw up, and he screwed up a ton of races. And and I go through a bunch of the examples in the book where he would say, this right-wing Democrat is the only one who can win this district, and then a left-wing Democrat would beat him. He would walk away from the race, and Rahm would say, we're done with this race. We're not spending a dime. We're going to lose it. And then the progressive wins the general election. It happened an embarrassing amount of times.
New Hampshire was a good one.
Yeah, Carol Shea Porter
who raised very, very little money. And
right,
was abandoned
anti-war
by Rahm.
on an anti-war. John Hall, a musician in upstate New York, abandoned. McNerney out in California, and McNerney's still in Congress. John Yarmouth, Rahm had no idea he was going to win. He's now the budget chairman. Like a lot of Carol Shea Porter just left. Like these are not people who like won and then got run out.
Well, how would that compare to the record of like Rahm's guys? You know, like
all wiped out in 2010.
The few good men style
and that's the thing. They came in. They voted against Obamacare. They voted against cap and trade. They voted against the spending bills. Voted against repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell. You name it, and then they all lost. So it's like thanks.
They lost in the 2010 wave.
They shrunk the size of the stimulus, which ramped up unemployment, and then they get wiped out.
So for a blissful 4 years there, it seemed like the Democrats had picked the electoral lock, and that they've finally been able to dominate the new, this new realigned, 6-party system or whatever you want to call it, without having to resort to a multiracial working class becoming like following the lead of a rainbow coalition that Jesse Jackson proposed. And after Obama won, put an exclamation point on that victory, it did seem like for a time that all that Jesse Jackson said, that would just be a footnote, and we'll just have a permanent Democrat majority in Electoral College.
Right, and in some strange ways, the Obama coalition was the one that Jesse Jackson wanted to put together. Which was progressive whites, Black, Hispanic, LGBT, with then a ton of Wall Street money thrown in. So that wasn't the part that Jesse Jackson wanted, but they've been chasing that coalition ever since then. But that's the precise one that Jesse Jackson pointed to and said, if you can pull these people together, you're a majority party.
And it turns out that it was really completely tied to the specifics of the economic collapse happening right as the election is happening, and the specific person of Barack Obama. Because they went into 2016 thinking, we've got this figured out.
Right.
We don't need to rock the boat. We just slap another coat of paint on Hillary Clinton and have her do the Obama thing. And there was no traction because she's not Obama, and literally nobody is.
Right. And people overlook this unique event, which was Obama saving Detroit. Like that, like the fact that he went in, Republicans wanted Detroit to go bankrupt. Mitt Romney
baby,
famously headlined his column in the Wall Street Journal, "Let Detroit go bankrupt." Obama says, "No, I'm going to take a political risk. I'm going to save these auto companies." That bought him 2012. Like that, without that, who knows, how that ends up going, or without them nominating this cartoon plutocrat of Romney. But then by 2016, none of that goodwill is drifting to Hillary Clinton.
They
don't see her.
She didn't talk about
and
it.
They suspect she probably would have let him go under.
They probably would have.
So take us to you talk about in your book 2009, 2010. Democrats have at varying points a 60-vote filibuster-proof majority in the Senate, massive majority in the House, and Rahm Emanuel is the chief of staff.
Right, guy keeps being brought in.
So so he was the head of the DCCC. So like he technically did his job. They won the House and Senate in 2006. Then Obama names him chief of staff. But like before that, you were telling me not only was it like Rahm, picking these candidates or his guys, but it was also like ignoring everyone who was a progressive or liberal. But like anytime a blue dog picked up the phone to him, he was on the other end of the line.
It's striking, yeah. And he'd come right down to the Capitol too. And in Washington, there's all kinds of theater. Who goes
where,
who goes to who,
and who goes to who
means everything. Any blue dog has any problem, Rahm's in his little sedan zipping down Pennsylvania Avenue. What can I do for you? Stimulus is too big. How about we take 150 billion off it? How's that? Okay, how about 200 billion? We'll take 200 billion off of it. Progressives, it's the complete opposite. Rahm is talked about as this tough guy, who's really gonna crack some knuckles.
He swears. Can you believe
he
it?
He swears. Says bad words. The only time he brings that force to bear is with the left.
Yeah. Those are the people he called the R word. It wasn't the Republicans.
Yeah. Right. And that was because Move On and some other groups were running ads urging blue dogs to vote for Obama's budget and Obama's spending bill. And Rahm flipped out on them. Got some stories in the book of people getting called into the White House and told, stop it. Like, if you continue with this, we're going to go to your funders and we're going to shut down this little progressive group that you've got. Like, we've got this. Stop agitating. Don't push Republicans. Don't push Democrats.
It's interesting because in a lot of the Obama apologia, his apologists paint him as a guy who actually did want to, fundamentally transform the country, but was just so constrained by, a few senators and a few blue dogs in the House. But you're painting a different story, that Obama's own consigliere was the one just saying, this is the direction we're going.
Yeah, and there's a debate that still goes on about what you could have done to get 60 votes for a better stimulus or 60 votes for this or that. But in the book, I step away from that a little bit and say, what if Obama had actually brought his army to Washington? Mm-hmm. What if instead of shutting down OFA, which was his grassroots
putting it under
operation,
the DNC,
put it under the DNC, mothballing it. In fact, it's Beto O'Rourke's campaign manager is the one who was assigned the task of executing
Order 66.
Taking all the elder behind the barn.
Literally, she's the one whose job it was to shelve that thing. What if instead of doing that on election night or inauguration, say, I want 10 million people to demand that we do X, Y, and Z,
yes,
and we're gonna make this happen. There were people talking about the end of the Republican Party.
I remember that. I remember feeling that way.
Yeah, I did too.
I remember, after the 2008 election, watching Gore Vidal watching the returns, and so he was being filmed, and someone asked him, like, "What do you think of this?" And he goes, "I think the Republicans are as dead as the Whigs of yesteryear, and they will never win another election again."
It felt that way, and they telegraphed right away that their strategy to come back was to vote against everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Said it.
They did not hide it.
Yeah.
And Obama's response was, let's not push them.
When McConnell said that, our top the economy was still in fucking free fall.
Yeah.
He was shedding jobs at a stunning
Like
rate.
1 million jobs a month.
And he's like, our number one priority is to man him a second term.
Yeah.
It's like, that's just breathtakingly sociopathic and out in the open. And yet they were still like, no, these are the guys we have to deal with.
I saw an article the other day quoting Rahm Emanuel from around 2009 saying, I don't give a shit about judges. We're not spending political capital on judges.
What do they have to do with that?
I mean, this goes to the point about Rahm Emanuel as a character. Famously, his brother, Ari Emanuel, is the hotshot Hollywood agent of which the Ari character,
his brother, Jeremy Piven, yes.
His brother, Jeremy Piven, yes. And that, he relishes the role of being like that guy, being like the fuck you guy, the guy who gets you in a room and screams at you, but ultimately does it in your benefit and is like just wants you to win.
Yeah, he just wants you to win.
Done.
Right.
You just fucking children, you babies, you don't understand what reality is like out here.
And
he's a tough guy. Like during the auto bailout debate, he said, "Oh, fuck the UAW." That's him.
Yeah. And fuck the haters. Like, I know what's right, but like ultimately, like, I'm the guy in charge, and like I like, this is politics, and I know how to play hardball, and I know how to get shit done and win. And like, that's his extremely cultivated self-image. But like, I think the revealing thing about him is that what he's really good at is convincing people that he's that guy, and staying in the room despite the fact that like the manifest failures of all of his political machinations.
And part of it, there wasn't a real alternative media at the time. Politico didn't even exist in 2006. The Huffington Post was sort of around, but it was just a blog. Mm-hmm. You didn't have like New York Magazine and TNR and like all of these other outlets that will post hot takes about what the Democratic establishment is doing wrong. There was no Intercept at that time. And so it was just basically the New York Times and the Washington Post telling the story.
Oh, I remember all the stories about Rahm Emanuel were just fawning. Like, look, in this war room, yelling, hollering at people, doing swears. My God, This guy is just, he's got it by his fists.
And there's a book that comes out of it called The Thumpin', which is...
The Thumpin'?
The Thumpin'. A reporter from Chicago, I believe, follows him around and just catches all his swears. And like, he's on the phone swearing, and he's in the room swearing, and he's in the airport swearing. You're like, wow,
I
this
remember,
guy.
Obama gave like a roast or a dinner in Rahm's honor, and he told the story about how Rahm lost like the tip of his finger in a deli slicer accident when he was a teenager.
He worked at Arby's.
At Arby's,
yes.
Oh, he has the meats.
They have his. Meat.
They have his meat. So he like cut off the tip of his middle finger, and Obama said he lost his middle finger, which rendered him nearly speechless. It's just like a pretty funny line, but
he was pretty good at that.
Yeah.
So that was the last best chance the Democrats got to legislate. They didn't push for card check. They let Acorn, ironically, a community organizing coalition, just totally get destroyed.
Right, and there was a push to do. Okay, we can't get rid of the filibuster yet because we've got 58 senators who won't agree to it. You can do budget reconciliation, which is what the Republicans did to try to repeal Obamacare to do their tax cuts. And so there was a push, put climate change in reconciliation. So you only need 50 votes to do it. They don't do it. Like they had all of these different levers that they could have pulled, and they just decided
that's fine.
not to pull.
It's a big deal.
It's all right. It's all right. We got time for that.
What's that? The capital of the U.S. state is gone now. What happened? No, we're fine.
Well, to return now to Rahm Emanuel, just to fill in the gaps in his story. White House chief of staff, and then his next big job was mayor of Chicago, which he just departed from that job.
He fixed all the problems. Now he can ride off into the sunset.
He did preside over a murder cover up and probably the worst major police force in America, which is really saying something in the Chicago PD.
Mass closing of public schools. Let's not forget that.
That's also good. So Rahm
operated some kind of churning machine meant to grind up the poor and turn Chicago from. Well, it's like I guess we never released the footage from our Chicago live show, so people won't understand this reference. But tried to turn the city from this horrifying maelstrom of violence that Airbnb host warned us about into like some kind of like Disneyfied Times Square.
World-class city. That was his phrase.
World-class city. You can see sort of evidence of the things Rahm does believe in, I suppose, in his tenure as mayor. But just recently, just now, immediately out of office, he has immediately got a job as a columnist for the Atlantic.
Of course. God, I love the Atlantic.
And it's just, sort of welcome with open arms.
Neoliberal debeak, I called it. And it's still true.
The liberal media. And, the first article he did was like a sort of a pan to Pete Buttigieg. But he was like a contributor then. And he was just like, the point of that article was like, being gay is the least interesting thing about Mayor Pete, and then went on to just talk about like how he's the perfect candidate, and like people need to start taking him seriously. He's the future of the Democratic Party. So now he's officially been hired as a full-time columnist, and I really would love your thoughts on this piece, Ryan, because based on everything we said, like it's incredible. The title of this piece is called "It's Time to Hold American Elites Accountable for Their Abuses."
It's so good. It's so good.
They covered up a murder of someone of a teenager when he was mayor,
and he was involved in it.
Yeah, he was personally involved in it. Oh, and like you pointed this out, that the reporter who broke that story is now waiting tables.
Yeah, he's serving coffee at a hotel in Washington. He's still doing freelance work on the side, but yeah. He's does not have a full-time journalism job. The reporter who broke that story got the video loose from Rahm's hands.
So now Rahm has
and didn't he back a bunch of just these white elephant fucking development projects? Like something with DePaul University, some $1 fucking facility and obviously like every other big city mayor, let fucking like developers just write their housing policy and all that shit.
Took hundreds of millions of affordable housing money and just wouldn't spend it. He would literally rather not spend the money.
So Rahm is back now with his very cush, high profile byline in the Atlantic, saying that American elites need to be held accountable. And it says here, if Democrats want to address simmering middle class anger, they need to deliver justice. So I just want to read from a couple selections from this piece here.
We must nominate Darkwing Duck.
So he begins by talking about the college admissions scandal. and he says, the outrage over the Varsity Blues investigation perfectly illustrates what may be the most important, least understood, and underappreciated political dynamic of our era. A full-on middle-class revolt against the elites and the privileges they hoard. I mean, a middle-class revolt against sort of decadent elites. They're very angry.
Yeah.
So he goes, the privileges they hoard. For all the focus on inequality and social justice, this middle-class revolt is the most important barrier standing between Democrats and the White House. They can't afford to ignore it. Think of what's happened over the past decade and a half. And now please think about this paragraph in light of what we just talked about with Rahm's career, particularly in the White House. America endured a war sold on false premises, a bailout of bankers issuing entirely toxic debt, and a massive public effort to prop up auto executives who were building cars that weren't selling. Is it any wonder so many middle-class taxpayers resent the elites? The middle class has been forced to bail them out from their own mistakes time and time again, and yet the beneficiaries of that goodwill haven't apologized, let alone taken responsibility. America's middle class is Cinderella, and the nation's elite are her evil stepsisters.
What?
Only now it's the stepsisters who get to marry the prince. It's infuriating.
Oh, that's great writing. I see why they hired him. It clearly wasn't just glad handling and elite, self-promotion. Clearly, they're just like, his prose is too sparkling.
So, I mean, other than the Iraq War, he's hanging.
Which he supported. He ran in 2002 as a pro-war candidate.
So he's saying, like, the problem is, like, and then
Which he didn't need to do. This he's running to represent Chicago.
Look, we're not. There's no point talking about who killed who.
But he's saying, like, he's basically hanging the auto bailout and the bailout of the overall of Wall Street of, like,
Which was true, especially the Wall Street bailout. Yeah, that was awful, and they didn't need to do it. There's other things they could have done, but there was a couple of guys in charge at that time who decided that there was no other alternative.
And as
Rahm was also,
and he was also shaving hundreds of billions of dollars off the stimulus that,
Yeah, and I get into this in the book too, that he was instrumental in one of the biggest scandals around the Wall Street bailout, which was the AIG bonuses.
Ooh,
yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
This,
I remember the
and this,
bonuses.
everyone that I talked to who lived through that in the Senate and the House says, like, that's the moment we lost everything. Like, we lost the public right there. They absolutely turned on us, and we took the blame for everything. And this was something that Rahm Emanuel and Tim Geithner pushed for. Chris Dodd, of all people, who was the chairman of the banking committee, wanted to make sure that there were no bonuses anywhere near this bailout. They said no. That appalled them. That's unconstitutional.
Oh, it's not fair.
It's not fair. These contracts are sacred. These bonuses are written down on paper. You cannot take them away from these bankers who have worked so hard. So they insisted. They ended up going around Chris Dodd, going directly to a staffer on the committee to get the language changed. They ended Chris Dodd's career over this.
Oh my God.
Went on to become a lobbyist for Hollywood. So he's fine.
Yeah, now he's at the MPAA.
Actually, he got run out of there too. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh man,
He got lost to Jack Valenti's old job.
I forget the beef that ran him out of there.
I mean, to quote Rahm in this paragraph, it's infuriating.
yeah.
So skipping ahead here, he also says, maybe the clearest early manifestation was the Iraq War. After 9/11, the Washington elite claimed that the country needed to neutralize Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction. Congress and the media largely went along for the ride. But 1 trillion and 5,000 lives and 16 years later, by the way, it's actually quite a bit more than 5,000 lives.
Way more.
And 16 years later,
Lives that matter.
yeah, 16 years later, the public has been told that those weapons of mass destruction had not existed after all. Yet, as clear as that became, no one ever took it on the chin. No one from the Bush administration ever took responsibility. You know why? It's because Obama came into office immediately and said, we're looking forward, not backward, and eschewed any investigations of the run-up to the Iraq War, or let alone prosecutions of any of these people.
And the second that Pelosi won the House in 2006, she said, I'm taking impeachment off the table, if that sounds familiar.
Yeah. Taking impeachment off the... Wow. I totally forgot. Yeah, this is Nancy's career.
She's good.
She should have that on, like, a little embossed thing on her desk. I'm taking impeachment off the table.
Should be on the floor. Impeachment should be just on her floor.
But, like, so Rahm is saying here, like, there's a middle class revolt because of these things that, elites perpetrated and caused great catastrophe at huge cost in both, as our favorite thing, blood and treasure for the taxpayer. But, like, at the time, if you had tried to, let's say, make anyone in the Bush administration or Wall Street take it on the chin, guess who you'd be running up against trying to stop you from doing that?
I was appalled when it looked like Rahm Emanuel might get one of these gigs, and I guess he's already got a gig with ABC too. It was clear that he was trying to become a
Wait,
pundit.
what's his ABC gig?
Oh, he's going to be a contributor for their news as well.
Oh,
He's
I thought
gonna
he
be
was getting like a sitcom or something.
Yeah, hopefully we
Modern
can
Family.
hope.
The Emanuels, him and his shitty brothers.
Yeah, and his asshole brothers.
But I've actually flipped on this idea. I think it's delightful that he has this column.
Well, it's good. It's like the perfect, I mean, this is the Atlantic. This is what this is perfect. So he goes, middle class families paid both blood and treasure. There's that phrase.
Oh, God, shut
but
the
the
fuck
people who had made the worst foreign policy decision in U.S. history never owned their failure. The same thing happened during the Great Recession. The nation's banking elite had lent billions to home buyers without any realistic hope of making good on their debts. Their irresponsible lending not only precipitated a global financial meltdown, but also necessitated a bailout from the nation's financially stressed middle-class taxpayers. Yet, even after being bailed out, the nation's banking executives never faced any real consequences. No one went to jail. They never had to repay the personal fortunes they'd made by passing out those bad loans. Once again, the middle class was called to bail out the elites who were responsible for the mess, while the elites got off scot-free.
This is so fucking perverse. What a sick puppy. I mean, he's never going to run for office again, presumably. His political career's done.
Right, and he actually floated his name out there for president as one of these 24. What? It looks like he's decided against that. But yeah, he was kicking himself around.
Fuck. Well, then never mind. Maybe this is all this is on the Nixonian revamp that is like a long march back to relevance. Because otherwise, why would you write this? Why would you just lie like that? Other than you just getting off on it because you're a little piggy.
Also, he spent about 2 years in the private sector between the White House and running for Congress, and in that time, he earned something like $19 million. Brokering private deals between people that he'd met while he was at the Clinton White House, and shaking down nuclear power companies for money. Like he walked away with an extraordinary amount of money. Who knows what he's worth now? If he had $19 million, that he made in a year in 1999.
Well, look, he's not a fat cat. He's a middle class taxpayer.
Right, middle class.
So
his constant use of middle class is just so 90s.
So he goes, Washington wasn't wrong to prevent a global financial meltdown. Obama was certainly right to save the domestic auto industry.
Against my advice.
But those decisions came at a real cost. After the Recovery Act had passed and the auto bailout was rolling, we had a fierce debate inside the White House about how to sequence our pushes for healthcare, climate change, and financial reform. As the White House chief of staff, I argued unsuccessfully that the American people needed the catharsis of seeing that the bankers who had gotten the country into this mess were being forced to take responsibility, that faith in government would plummet if we failed to deliver some Old Testament justice.
Yeah, he was in there saying stone these guys to death.
Yeah.
Can I just pause?
I don't think that's true. I think he might be lying.
Can I just pause and say nobody actually gave a shit about the auto bailout?
No, not the auto bailout.
right.
Other than people who loved it in the state of Michigan.
People
yeah.
who loved it, like you said, bought in the state of Michigan.
Right.
Outside, of course, of the racial dog whistles about Detroit.
Yeah.
So here he goes. I'm just skipping ahead. But he goes here. Democrats have become increasingly cognizant of the anger, but too often, this middle class anger, he goes, but too often they've drawn the wrong conclusions. The answer certainly isn't socialism. Middle class voters currently.
Shut the fuck up about the fucking middle class. That's not a thing. God damn it.
Middle class voters certainly presume that elites already control the government. So why would they want to give the bureaucracy any more power? Rather, Democrats need to become the party of justice. They need to demand accountability from bad actors and point out where Republicans would give them a pass. Every time Democrats look at a problem, they think of a program. And while those programs often point the way forward, Democrats need to focus their energy on convincing the middle class that they share their values more than just their economic interests.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what is it fucking talking about? Does he want to get SEAL Team 6 to just murder Lloyd Blankfein? If he does, I'm fine with that.
I mean, I'd vote for him if
that's
that were the
cool.
case.
But he's saying we do that instead of reordering society in any way that's
Wait.
more
So we
just to
know.
people.
Hey, when Democrats face a problem, they want to write a solution or something. We need to spend our time convincing the middle class of our values, through podcasting.
You know what this literally sounds like? This sounds like the what the Jacobins did with the Reign of Terror. When at least according to Marx. No, I'm serious. Marx's analysis of the French Revolution, the Reign of Terror era was that because it was a revolution made up of lawyers and like the emerging bourgeois, and it was like a class project in that sense. And the productive forces didn't exist for socialism to really, be a viable option. And the people of Paris wanted change. They wanted lives that were good. They couldn't give them that. They didn't have the inclination or ability to create a social order that was just. What they could do is cut off the heads of all the fucking asshole royals and fancy noble people who they hated. And he's basically saying, yeah, just do that instead.
But to Lori Loughlin of Full House.
I guess, yeah.
And it's a version of Joe Biden's solution, which is to take Donald Trump behind the gym and beat him up.
Yeah.
Tom Perez is going to hit somebody with a 2x4. Because, right, they don't have an actual program as Rahm Emanuel
And the
says.
thing is, if they wanted to kill people, I mean, that would at least be something. But he's clearly not talking about that.
If he wants to give the Chicago Police Department treatment to, Lloyd Blankfein or Jamie Dimon, by all means. But something tells me that's not what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is here, he says, like, we need to become a party of justice in bringing these bad actors to justice. Now, you could disagree with me, but like, to my mind, you cannot do anything close to bringing the bad actors in American politics to justice without something that looks like socialism.
Well, you have to make them less powerful, or else they'll just prevent ever being held accountable because they have all the fucking money.
Well, okay, just to finish it out here, it goes, there is more to voters than their wallets. To do that, Democrats need to prove to them that they know the difference between right and wrong.
How? What?
And that begins with owning the terms accountability and responsibility.
Jesus fucking Christ, I'm going to jump out of this goddamn window.
They need to own those terms. Democrats need to be the ones demanding that those who fall short, no matter how privileged, be made to answer for their own decisions.
Theater.
Every one of us
go around with a big boot, and we're going to kick them in the boot. We're going to give them the boot. Hey, all you naughty rich people, we're going to give you the boot.
Every one of us should have to live by the same moral and ethical codes. The nation's elite shouldn't have any special license to take the easy way out. And I think it's interesting that he opens the article talking about the college admissions scandal, because I think actually that's what he's talking about. I think he's basically signaling that the Democrats
throw the book
need
at
to
Felicity
fucking like strap Felicity Huffman and William H. Macy into the electric chair like Julius and Ethel Rosenberg and just throw the switch on these Hollywood scofflaws, because that's the elite he's talking about.
Yeah.
He's not talking about the people who actually have any fucking power or influence.
No.
Like, he's not talking about putting healthcare executives in the stockades or anything like that. No, he's talking about Lori Loughlin and fucking their shitty influencer daughters.
And
I mean, it has to be. I mean, how do you? God damn it! How do you write that? It's breathtaking.
I'm deeply grateful that he wrote this and that he's back in the news, because when I was writing the book, I was like, yes, Rahm's going to be my main character because he's been such an influential figure in the party over the last 30 years. But are people over him? He's been gone from Washington since 2010. Are people not going to care about Rahm Emanuel? Thank you, Rahm, for coming back and showing us who you
he's
are.
Bringing it. He's going to be a recurring figure, I think, if he keeps writing shit like this. Because you start with I hate it when people refer to things that people in public say as gaslighting, because it's just lying. You can only be gaslit by like an intimate partner.
Yeah,
but that. Having his career and then being like, you know what, we really didn't give these elites the what for.
Hey,
and that war.
The problem was
that is like the gaslight. I feel like I'm being gaslighted.
The problem is, there's all this Donald, and the weird thing about this is that, like, reading in between the lines here, and actually not even reading in between them, just reading the lines, he's basically blaming Obama for Donald Trump.
Yeah,
which is like, in a way, I mean, I kind of agree with that in certain respects, but like, at every level, like, it was there. It's yourself. You're talking about yourself.
Of his all the worst decisions, and because he was the chief of staff when they actually had control of the political agenda, and they fucked the dog completely. That was when he was chief of staff. Then they like had that revolving door of like weirdo cat men and like
one of them Daley.
Yeah, one of the Daley's like dipshit brothers who couldn't even get elected. Mayor of Chicago
didn't even make it past the runoff.
Didn't make it into the runoff. A Daley brother couldn't make it into the runoff to be mayor of Chicago. What? How did he get out of his house every day to be fucking chief of staff?